Hi, good morning. I'm Matilde Igual, he's Luis Hilti, and together we founded 1 year ago the Institute for Linear Research. And this linear is not a metaphor, it refers to a real line that we traced on a map. It's an arbitrary line that crosses the world, and the goal of the Institute is to research one segment after the other on the line by walking on it. And we will try to describe the landscapes we encounter. And yes, we won't do it only the two of us. We hope to find also here collaborators who will walk with us on the line. And yes, we will present now the research method.
You may wonder why and how it all came to be, so let's start from the beginning. It started innocently in a much smaller scale a couple of years back when we were working on a competition to represent a country at the Venice Biennale. And we were reading a lot, looking at a lot of maps and trying to find a way into how to represent a country. But we figured out that the more we read, the more maps we accumulate and the more streets we walk, the closer we get to narratives that are already existing. We were kind of retracing knowledge that already existed, narratives that are already out there. And that's exactly not what we wanted. We were looking for the unknown, as we believe that in the unknown, there's a potential to really spark a discourse on how society relates to its territory. And we wanted to see the people that live in this country, their own country, with completely new eyes. But how do you get to the unknown, which by definition you don't know what it is or where it is? So we tried to figure out a strategy to get there and to discover a place that we already knew or supposedly knew anew. And we had a twofold strategy. First, we defined a topic to investigate, and we chose a topic of remoteness, meaning the inaccessible. And by focusing on the inaccessible, we had to push the limits of what we were looking for. And secondly, we want to introduce an element of complete randomness to lead us to places that we would have never gone to for any other reason. So we drew a straight line across the country and decided to walk from one border to the other border and just see what happens.
Yes, and now we'll explain what we did, not in order to present what we did, but rather to show the method, because that's what we intend on doing on the rest of territories. So the first step is to build an archive, so to collect documents and talk with people. In this case, Luis is from Liechtenstein, so we had this exchange where I would be the outsider and he would be the insider, and that's something we want to repeat in other places. And that way we also can find the topics we think might be interesting to be dealing with in this particular segment. So we'll talk with experts, non-experts, people who live on the line, and yes, that's how we start. Then there's the walking, which is a very important part of the process, because we think that it's really going out there and being immersed in the landscape that makes a difference. We will walk, or we walked, as closer to the line as possible, but of course it's not as easy as drawing it on a map. What looks simple on a map is actually very complex. In this case, in the Alpine context, it was very much about the topography. That was a big obstacle. And while we walk, we discuss, we observe, and we get really in the mood of thinking that whatever is on the line, everything is on the line, is important. And while walking, we also document. Our decision was to document the territory and the landscape, mostly with analog tools, by sketching and by taking photographs of the places we would go through. In this case, we did leave traces. It's not something that will always happen, but this research was done within the framework of the university. So the students did some projects on the line, and that's one of the possibilities, but we want to explore different ways of acting on the territory or not acting on it. And one of the reasons why we are doing all this is to start a discussion with the general public. So these were the outcomes of this walk. We did an exhibition in Venice, we did an exhibition in Vaduz, which is on the line, and we also did some walking tours where we invited people, local people, people who live on the line, to walk with us some stretches. Yes, and the goal is not so much to show what we've done, but rather creating a space where people come in and they look at the documentation, and we can talk about what the landscape means to them and what it meant to us, and so on.
An exhibition and a walking tour and all these different mediums that we used so far were kind of ephemeral, and they would fade away as these things come to an end. So we were looking for a medium to continue this discourse, but also to have something more permanent. And we developed a concept for a book initially that would not only showcase these pictures and all this documentation, but also include the wide range of discourses that we had. We tried to interview a lot of people from outside the field. We had archaeologists, we had philosophers, we had but also planners, ecologists, discussing this particular line, the relation to it, and what they knew about it, to get a manifold perspective on a space that seemed or is arbitrary in the end. But one thing that we noticed in this entire process was that the network of people involved in the project grew and grew and grew, and the discourse really became something very fundamental and less connected to a specific place. We realized that the discussion were less about that country, Liechtenstein, but really about the fundamental ideas of architecture, landscape, how a territory is occupied by a society and what it means and how it is shifting in front of their eyes. And we just couldn't think of just stopping the project as the exhibition kind of finished. And also it became kind of clear to us that the line doesn't stop at the national border. It doesn't really care about national borders. It continues around the globe. So we just checked out where the line would go if we would continue it. And on the right you can see a list of the countries that the line goes through that we didn't choose. It just happened in the extension of the line. And we already had a large network around the globe of people who were following us, that we were in discourse with, and they started to send ideas of walks in their own countries that we could do with them, that they could do without us, to investigate different parts of the global landscape in completely different parts of the world. You can see some of them here. And this is a bit an opportunity for us also to now talk to you. Half of you on the way here probably crossed the line unknowingly, somewhere in the air or on the train, and the other half has probably crossed the line at some other point. Everyone has a relationship to it, and yet it is of course not important as such. But we really want to continue this path that we chose so far to create a network between institutions, people and places, and foster this dialogue further. And we invite all of you, and we've seen some projects already that the line crosses, to join this discourse and develop this idea further and get closer to what contemporary landscape is, and find inspiration for potential projects and more.
And if you want to check out where the line is precisely going through, you can go to our website. There's a link to a map, and yeah, it's kind of fun to see what kind of landscapes it crosses, and also to see if it's just going next to your house or your school or your grandma's place. I don't know. If you know any place that is on the line, please let us know.
Yeah, thank you very much.